Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Hello everybody, welcome to episode 82 of Matterhorn Mondays. I'm your host, Matterhorn Matt.
And I'm Alex the Historian.
And today, we are joined by the one and only Jeremy once again. Why don't you say hello to everybody?
Hello everybody.
We got an awesome, very wonderful stream planned for you guys today, so be sure to stay tuned through all the topics. Today we're going to be going over the recent rule changes happening at Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom. I guess all of Walt Disney World in general. We're also going to be going very briefly over some newly released Galaxy's Edge information. And we're also, you guys, the meat of the episode most likely is going to be us sort of giving our thoughts on the Walt Disney Company as a whole. So you guys are going to want to stay tuned to that. Alex roasts hosts. That's a... Thank you, Sam.
You know it.
Yeah, we don't have any birthdays this week. We do have a couple next week, though. We'll get to those in the next episode. I believe we have exactly two next week. But yeah, we gotta get through this stuff quickly, you guys, because Alex only has an hour, and we want to make sure that we get as much out of that hour as we possibly can.
It's got to be the juiciest hour we have.
Yeah.
It will. Yeah, it will. It will.
100%, you guys. I'm going to barrel through the Matt Snaps. I'm just going to pop it right open and just start pouring while I read over all the other announcements we have. We don't have any announcements, I don't think so. Oh, well, I would like to congratulate Resort TV 1. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of their channel, for reaching 50,000 subscribers this past week. If you guys have not, I just overfilled this. I can't put the top on or else it'll spill all over my pants. If you guys have not heard...
Snapple?
Yeah, oh, I should say it's a different flavor this time. It's kiwi strawberry. Yeah, and the fun fact, real fact number 1429, the Great Lakes have more than 30,000 islands. The Great Lakes.
My God.
That's a lot of islands, you guys.
You are the number one Snapple social media influencer in my eyes.
I mean, I can't think of anyone else who would top me, Snapple. If you're listening, send over the cash. Just kidding. But yeah, Resort TV 1, really great channel. If you guys have not checked them out, they do live streams every Friday and sometimes Saturday, and also possibly Wednesday as well. They live stream from the parks a lot, from the Walt Disney World parks, and then, like I said, they recently hit 50,000 subscribers, so congratulations to them. Also, if you would like to be wished a happy birthday on, Resort TV 1, really great channel, you guys. If you've not checked them out before, they also make like relaxing stroll videos throughout the different parts of the parks. You can like put it on if you're maybe like cleaning in the background or something, just to have that ambiance. It's really great. Really great. I would 100% recommend them.
How can you watch it if you're cleaning?
That's a good point. That's a good point. You could also just watch it instead of putting it on in the background. So you can actually pay attention to the content. But I mean, anyways, if you would like to be wished a happy birthday on stream, you can do so by submitting your name and your birthday using the date or using the link down in the description below. We haven't had any birthdays this past, how long has it been, like 3 weeks or so? Anyways, we're going to get right into this week's News from the Peak.
We now present to you News from the Peak.
For our first bit of news from the Peak, you guys, this is amazing news in my opinion. Mickey's PhilharMagic coming to DCA next month.
It's so soon. I can't believe it.
I know. This is probably one of the fastest turnarounds from announcement to opening of an attraction or show I've ever seen. So if you guys don't know what Mickey's PhilharMagic is, it's sort of like a 3D You have to wear 3D glasses for it, sadly. It's a CG animated sort of show, I guess. I've only seen it once.
Me too, yeah.
But it's
I've
a pretty cute
more
show.
than once.
Well, Jeremy, since you've seen it more than once, what are your thoughts on Mickey's PhilharMagic coming to the Sunset Showcase Theater?
I remember when there was a lot of buzz around it when it first opened in Walt Disney World, almost like 15 years now, probably 15 years ago or so. And I remember going on it for the first time, and it's a lot of fun. I remember it being a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. And it's a really clever 3D show. I think it's been kind of a common thought for a long time that it would fit in to DCA. And I'm kind of glad it's coming. I think there's a valid critique that, there's so much carbon copy and pasting of attractions these days than like ever before. But this one, I don't mind. This one, it's not like seeing PhilharMagic in Florida is like the experience that makes Magic Kingdom unique from Disneyland. I think it'll fit in just fine. It'll be cool. It'll be cool to have it in California.
Yeah, and it's nice to have something in the theater because, as you may know, this theater used to house the very popular, or at least I think it's popular. I see a lot of people giving a lot of praise to Muppet Vision 3D, but that's the theater.
I love Muppet Vision 3D.
I don't think I've ever seen it. I might have seen it when I was a kid, but I don't remember.
But the funny thing is, speaking of copying and pasting attractions, it's Muppet Vision 3D has been in California Adventure for years, or was. And the funny thing is, me and my family would only ever go on it when we went on vacation to Florida. It's interesting how even an attraction that's been copy and pasted into your local Disney park, we still only felt the need to go on it when we were in Florida. We never really went on it when it was in California, which is interesting.
Well, I wish I could have.
And it's the same exact thing.
But yeah, for those of you who are fans of Mickey's PhilharMagic, you should be very excited about this. I'm excited because no more movie previews in that spot. That's pretty good. But yeah, this is going to be like a lightning round, news from the peak. Moving on to our second bit of news. The new Disneyland Resort parking structure is to be called the Pixar Pals Parking. Pixar Pals Parking. So yeah, if you guys have... I don't know what to think about this. The 5,000 parking space structure will have 6 levels. Level 1 being The Incredibles, Level 2 being Coco, Level 3 being Cars, which is kind of weird. I feel like Cars should be all of the levels because the cars are parking inside the structure. I don't know. Level 4. Level 4 is Monsters, Inc. Level 5, Finding Nemo, and Level 6 will be themed to Inside Out. The new structure is set to open no later than the end of July, hopefully sooner though. Also sort of on the same topic as parking, the Toy Story lot will also be expanded with more than 2,000 parking structures and new entrances, as well as a dedicated security screening station to check guests before they board the buses to the Esplanade. So that's kind of cool as well. You don't have to wait. If you park at the at the Toy Story lot, you don't have to wait in the long security booth lines in the Esplanade. You get to have your own sort of VIP line, I guess, kind of. But yeah, so
I thought that was a good idea.
Yeah, I do agree. It is a very good idea. Hopefully, we'll see how it turns out. But I don't really know what else to say about this. Leave your guys, leave your thoughts about the Pixar Pals Parking. That's it. I don't know. It sounds like a weird name. Anyways, Pixar Pals Parking, end of July, hopefully sooner. And for our last bit of news from the peak. This makes me very excited. Disneyland is testing, or did test, mobile ordering only for Dole Whips at the Tiki Juice Bar. This test was set to begin on the 28th through the 30th, which, you know, today's the 30th, so we sort of missed that. But this is done in an attempt to reduce crowds in time for Galaxy's Edge. And in my opinion, it's much easier to order using the app than to go up to the counter, wait in line just to order, and then you still have to wait for the Dole Whip to be made. It's very convenient. I feel like this will help a lot with crowd flow. I think this is what we said they should have done a long time ago, so I'm glad that they're finally doing this. Leave your guys' thoughts about mobile ordering only down in the comments below. And yeah, that's it for news from the Peak. I do have a question that I need to propose to you guys before we get into everything else. Has anyone seen the new Dumbo movie? If you have, you don't have to type in the chat. You can like private message me, but I want to know what the movie is about, because I've seen clips where Danny DeVito says that this new Dumbo movie starts with Dumbo flying, and then from then on, it's sort of like, I don't know what the heck is going on. So that leads me to believe that the new Dumbo remake is supposed to be a sequel to the original Dumbo, but then it also has songs like Pink Elephants and Baby Mine in it as well. So that sort of, I don't know, my brain is like broken trying to figure out what this movie is. So please, I'm begging you guys, someone who's seen it, please.
I mean, just go see it.
I mean, I can't.
Because he's mad.
I guess I could do that. I guess I could just go see it.
I mean, I don't feel very motivated or compelled to see it either, but you know, I would rather see it than have someone tell me what.
That's true. Well, if I do end up seeing it, I will update you guys. I'll answer my own question eventually. But yeah, it's just very, I don't know, it's just very confusing to me as to what this movie's about. But anyways, moving on from that, we do have our first, I need to make this full screen. We do have our first bit of non-news from the Peak, but of the main news from the base. I don't know. This is big news, you guys. Disney has unveiled their new park policies for Disneyland Resort. Did I say Disneyland has unveiled their new park policies? I don't know. Disney has unveiled their new park policies for Disneyland Resort and for Walt Disney World. Starting May 1st, guests will be no longer able to smoke in Disneyland, Disney California Adventure, or Walt Disney World, any of the parks. This is amazing news to pretty much everybody in the entire world. New designated smoking areas will be available outside of the parks. They haven't released any details as to where those will be. They probably shouldn't release the details. They got to make all the smokers do like a scavenger hunt to try and find them. That'd be kind of cool. This also includes vaping as well, from what I'm hearing. So, I mean, if you guys were annoyed from getting, puffs of, what is it, like water vapor? I don't even know what vaping is. If you were annoyed at getting like puffs of vapor sprayed into your face by your friends, just take them to Disneyland and they won't be able to do that anymore. So yeah, this is big news. Let's start with Alex. Alex, what are your thoughts on no more smoking in any of the American Disney parks?
I'm actually really in support of this because of the fact that, like, as a cast member, for many years, I dealt with just people just trying to be devious about how they smoke and stuff like that. And so, like, people would not use the designated smoking areas unless it was, like, where they were at already. You know what I mean? Like, unless it was conveniently near where they were. I didn't see very many people going, I'm going to walk all the way to, New Orleans Square to smoke. It was just like, I'm just going to light up right here, And so it was like, the worst that we could do as cast members was just go, no, you got to go to the smoking area. Like, that's the worst we could do. But it's like, now it's like the cast members can be like, hey, what are you doing? So anyway, and the other thing too is I saw it coming. I just didn't think like I didn't think it would happen so soon. I remember telling someone recently that I thought it would be like 5 years from now, like at least. And so anyway, but yeah, I saw it coming because, there used to be smoking sections all over the park. Then it went down to 3, then it went down to 2, and now it was down to 1. And then from there, it's gone. And I'm kind of glad because, I've got friends who literally they have breathing problems, and so when they go near a smoking area, it just gets really bad because they can't breathe. And sometimes it's not easy to just avoid a whole smoking area at all. It's just not easy. So
and yeah. Jeremy, what about you?
I think this is a good thing. It's been a long time coming. I think it'll just keep the park cleaner. There's nothing worse than walking by I'm not going to judge anybody who smokes cigarettes. I know many of my close friends are smokers, but you walk by the smoking area and it really is jarring. It's not a good smell, I think, to have in the parks. And it'll be good. They're probably implementing this rule because they had smoking area right where the entrance to Galaxy's Edge is now going to be. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with it as well, and it'll just be good for crowd flow as well, to not have areas in the park that are bunch of people bunched up just sitting around smoking cigarettes. It'll just be good for the overall park experience. I think it's a long time coming, and I am in support of this.
Yeah, one thing I was going to bring up was that there was, like Jeremy said, a smoking area right at the entrance to Galaxy's Edge, and that's probably one of the main reasons they did this, to be honest. But I mean, you never know. We'll see.
I know, like the kids are just on their way to Star Wars Land, and then all of a sudden it's like, you want to buy some death sticks?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's basically what it was like. I'm not a fan of like the smell. I'm sure everybody in the entire world agrees with that. So I'm very happy with this. Very, very happy. Disney also released a few, I believe 2 more. What are they calling them? I don't even know. 2 more rule changes, I guess, to their parks. No more wagons in the parks. I mean, that's awesome. If you guys have seen like I'm sure you've seen at least one family like carrying like not like a red wagon, but like those tent sort of wagon things where you can like put your child in and you can like lay down and like stretch out like his full body length inside the wagon. Those are banned 100%. Very happy about that. And the strollers must also be 31 inches. I think that's inches. It's definitely not feet. 31 inches wide and 52 inches long or smaller. So no more big. I don't really know how big 31 inches is. Is it like that big? Or it could be this big. I don't know. Or is that centimeters? I don't know. I honestly don't know.
4 inches. Wait, no, it's 5 inches smaller than 3 feet wide.
So 3 feet. 1, 2. Okay. I think I understand now. So yeah, no more big boy strollers, only the small ones. Very excited about these as well. Yeah, Alex, what are your thoughts on no more strollers and or no more wagons in the park, as well as only small strollers allowed in the park?
I've been saying it for years, when people ask me about like what are some things that I like, some suggestions for when you visit the park, I always say, like, if you're going to bring a stroller, like, bring an umbrella stroller, one that folds up really small, because not only are those compact in size when you're using them, but they fold up super small so it doesn't get in the way when you're going like on rides or whatever, like if you go on the Disneyland Railroad. I mean, this lady was on the Disneyland Railroad with a double wide stroller, and it was blocking the way for people to get on the train car. Like, literally, there was no way to get on the train car because it was right there in the entryway of the car. And I was just like, And I remember the cast member was like, "Why don't you fold it up?" And the lady was like, "Honestly, if I fold it, it's not going to get any smaller." And I was like,
Okay.
"That's when you know you shouldn't bring it."
Jeremy, what about you?
Fine. Yeah, sure. You know, anything that'll help with crowd flow. Fine. I really don't have an opinion on the stroller business.
All right.
Oh,
Well,
okay. Whose side are you on? Just kidding.
Your
Just
side. Always. Always.
I think we should just take a moment. Everybody, up until, what was the date? May 1st. So we have until April 30th, I believe. We have until April 30th to bring in wagons, you guys. I feel like on April 30th, everybody, every single one of us listening, should go to Disneyland with a wagon and just celebrate the last day that wagons are going to be in the parks. Maybe we can put each other's wagons inside each other's wagons, and then we can wagon around the wagons. And I feel like that'd be a great bonding experience for all of us. So I'll be there. If any of you guys will be there as well, that'd be awesome. We need all the support we can get. But anyways, moving on to our second topic of the day. New details / rumors regarding Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. We'll just get right into it. Last week, I'm sure you remember Alex and I telling you guys that there may or may not be a standby line to get into Galaxy's Edge. Well, that's wrong, you guys. That is not true, says Disneyland VP Chris Thieler. He says there will be no standby line. In fact, I'm going to quote from Mr. Chris Thieler himself. He says, quote, "There will be no standby access to the land." This is while he's wearing his Kylo Ren mask. "There will be no standby access to the land, and we want to make sure that that's clear for guests. We don't want guests coming into the park thinking, I don't have a reservation. Maybe I'll just get in the queue and I'll be able to get in. We are not going to have a standby line. So it will be solely limited to those guests who have reservations." Unquote. Thank you, Mr. Chris. Chris spelled with a K as well. I wonder if he's related to other Chris with a K. I don't know. I don't know where to go from there. Was him? Wait, it could be him. We'll have to ask him. I'll ask him later today. I don't know Chris's last name, so it could very well be him. Anyways. So yeah, if you guys took to heart what Alex and I said last week, we were wrong. Then again, we did say that it was a rumor, so the rumor was wrong. We were just the messengers, you guys.
But you know what we also said? We also said that Disney would deny it outright because it's supposed to be a lie.
Oh, you know what? I forgot about that. Oh, the plot thickens, you guys. I mean, so it's really up in the air at this point. I don't know who to believe, Chris or some WDW Magic forum poster. I don't know. But yeah, I guess that's that for that part. We'll see, I guess, in the future. We will report, Alex and I will report to you guys from the battle line, from the front lines of Galaxy's Edge, whether or not there will be a standby line to get into the land. Disneyland also said that they will restrict the amount of time guests can spend inside the land during their May 31st to June 23rd soft opening period if you have a reservation. So that's sort of something we were predicting as well. Again, this is a quote from Chris with a K himself. Quote, "We will be giving guests a window of time, but we're still working through what that looks like and the duration for that. We're working hard to ensure that guests have enough time in the land to see all of the great things and experience the attraction." Attraction. Singular. We know guests might want to stay in there all day, but we've got a whole big group that wants to get in there. We're just trying to balance all those things and deliver the right solution for the guests. So, again, we sort of predicted that they would have some sort of time limit when you first enter the park to when you have to leave the park. But Alex, what are your thoughts on these brand new details revealed by Chris with a K?
Pretty much just what I said, that it's probably a lie because we said it would be a lie, and
You know, I completely forgot about that as well. So, gosh, I don't know. Jeremy, I guess Jeremy's probably going to say the same thing. But Jeremy, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't really know because it's so bold and new, a new way of handling a major addition to one of the parks that I don't know. I'm gonna take them at their word that this is the best possible way to go about dealing with the crowds and the hype for the land, but I don't know. That's my honest reaction is that it's interesting, and I wonder. It's interesting. It's new, so I have no idea, but I'm intrigued.
I mean,
that's about it.
Yeah, I am intrigued as well. I mean, again, like I said, I completely forgot that article that we were referencing last week said that Disneyland would come out straightforward and say that there would be no standby line, but that was just a diversion. So, I mean, I don't know who to believe at this point. I guess we'll wait.
I think at this point the Emperor is probably saying everything's going as planned.
Yeah, most likely. So, I mean, I guess we'll just see if there is a standby line. I'm sure there's going to be a standby line that forms nonetheless, and then people are just going to get turned away if this turns out to be true. We'll see. But then Disney also came out and said that they were working on a quote-unquote virtual queue to get into the land, which will notify guests when their time to enter Galaxy's Edge has arrived, and that this will be available sometime after the June 23rd soft opening period has ended. Now, I mean, I had a whole speech prepared about Mr. Chris, his statement, but, I mean, I don't know. I don't know now if we should believe what he's saying. I guess I'll read it nonetheless. It's not much of a speech. It's more like a one-sentence statement. So, I was going to say that going during this time period, so long as you have a reservation, might be the best opportunity to have guaranteed access to the land for months to come. Because Mr. Chris said that there would not be a standby line, but I don't know. He could be lying, like that one poster said. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I mean, yeah, I guess we'll see. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments.
I think it's true.
I mean, I don't know. There's like part of me, there's like a 51% part of me that believes Chris, but then the 49% doesn't believe Chris. I don't know.
Wow, so you really don't believe that announcement?
Yeah. Did I get the percentages right? I think.
Well,
I
mean that's.
I thought when you said
what I'm saying is that's such a divide, though, regardless of which is which. So it's like, I believe it. I don't think they wouldn't. All right.
I was like second guessing myself. I thought I added it up to like 150% or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I guess like I said, we'll just have to wait and see.
I believe it. Yeah.
Well, Jeremy believes it. I'm on the fence. Alex,
I believe it.
Alex,
I think people should just trust what I say because I'm a trusted resource. So, guys, don't get a reservation. Just show up at the park and wait in that long line, and you'll get in guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, or we could all bring ladders. Like, we could stack ladders on top of each other, climb through the back entrance. I don't know. Maybe if we find Walt's frozen head, they'll let us in. I feel like
this is getting out of hand.
Anyways, that's all we have in regards of these kinds of topics for you guys. Now we're going to be moving on to the meat of the podcast, everybody. Let's see. We're going to be going over. I don't really know. I couldn't think of like a good title for this segment, so I just titled it "Our Thoughts on the Current State of the Walt Disney Company." That sort of sounds like.
I was going to call it.
What a huge topic.
I was going to call it "Why We Complain."
Oh, that's.
Oh yeah, because that's really what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that is a much better a much better name, so we're just going to move forward with that. This is going to be the topic called Why We Complain. I have noticed, not many, but I have noticed at least 3 or 4 comments on previous episodes of the podcasts that basically tell us how negative we are towards anything new the company releases or reveals. So we decided to dedicate a chunk of this show to sort of explain ourselves. Now, we don't really want to make this into a 30-minute, hour-long, however long this segment ends up being. We don't want to make this into a segment that's just us complaining about how much we hate the direction the company is headed, because I'm sure for the majority, we don't necessarily hate the direction the company is headed, but we'll get into all the details very shortly. Instead, this segment is dedicated to why we think it's necessary to be critical voices of where the company is today and where it might be headed in the future. So yeah, I mean, I do have statements prepared to sort of prep everybody for what we're going to be talking about. I'd like to say that we do care about this company, since Disney is a large part of many of our lives, not just to us, but to, I mean, I'm sure 100% of the listeners as well, and to everybody else in this community. We feel the need to criticize the company on decisions we think were bad or good to help preserve the integrity of the Walt Disney Company as a whole, not just for us, but for the future generations of children that grow up to know what it's like to see creativity and collaboration flourish in the company, whether it be in the films, the parks, and the company as a whole. I guess I should also say, when we say what we say, we're not saying that we think this is 100% the way we think the company should be run, or whether or not we think 100% that this XYZ would be the best decision for the company heading forward. We're just giving our opinions as like I said, fans of the company, lovers of Walt himself, of the company. And yeah, I guess we sort of broke this up into three categories. First, we're going to start with the films. After that, we're going to get into the parks. And then after that, we're going to get into thoughts on the Fox Disney deal, because Alex and I sort of teased that we would get more into that this week with Jeremy. So yeah, we're going to get into the films. That will be our first segment to talk about. Now, the Disney films were a major part of my childhood, as I'm sure they were for everybody listening as well, and many of them hold a very special place in my heart, whether the films be about embracing yourself and realizing what makes you different, makes you special, from the movie Dumbo, or if it's about being honest in the movie Pinocchio. Walt's films have certainly left a mark on the world, not just for their historical significance, but for their beauty and uniqueness, and for the lessons they've taught many generations of children and parents alike. Now, I guess this is the biggest part of this discussion about the films. We're going to be starting with sequels/reboots. Before we get into the discussion, I'd like to point out that out of all the 7 films Disney has coming out in 2019, all of them, and when I say all, I mean all of them are either sequels or reboots to already existing intellectual properties, not including Star Wars or Marvel, because, those would count as well if you decided to count those. The films Disney has currently slated coming out in 2019 is Toy Story 4, the live-action Aladdin remake, the live-action Dumbo remake, the live-action The Lion King remake, the sequel to the Maleficent film, which came out 2014, I believe, sequel to Frozen, and a live-action Artemis Fowl, which is based on a book, I believe, film. Now, when we say what we're going to say, we're not saying that sequels and reboots are a bad thing in any way. But I guess sort of what we're trying to get at is, where should we draw the line when it comes to these sequels/reboots? Because like I said, every single one of the films the Walt Disney Company has coming out in 2019 are all sequels, or like I said, live-action reboots of already existing films. Now, let's start with Jeremy. What are your thoughts on the sequels/reboots era of the Walt Disney Pictures?
It's interesting. The community has already decided what the label for this era of Disney filmmaking is called. You know, when I say era, we have the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze/Dark Age, the Renaissance, and so forth. And from about like Tangled or Frozen on, or maybe Princess and the Frog, I'm not quite sure what the marker is. This is supposed to be called the revival period. I think that's a very interesting way to articulate it. Because my background is the theater, when we say a revival in the theater, it's a remounting of a show that's already been done before. In film terms, that would be a remake, basically. And I think that's exactly what this period is. It's the revival period. It's going, whereas the Renaissance was going back and studying the artists and their contributions to what made animation so unique and special and experimental in its early days, and then taking those techniques and ideals and making new films with them. This is looking back and going, that film was successful, so let's do a remake of the film, as opposed to asking why was Aladdin a great film, and dissecting it and looking into it and going, oh, we can make another film. You know, it's a very interesting period to be in. I think everyone who listens to this show knows my opinions about, and anyone who's on the Discord, of course, knows my opinions about the remake mania that's been going on in the company. I don't see how there's, and I'm sure there is. I mean, of course there is. It's an active conversation in the community, but I really don't know how anyone can defend that this is a good thing. This is a flourishing thing. This is a sign of great creativity. Even, you know, of course, there's so many people involved in the movies that, you know, cinematographers and production designers that are very well talented and, of course, have a lot of creativity. But I think intent is key, and leadership is key, and sustainability is key. It's sad, actually, to me. This is the foundation of the films, are the foundation of the company. That's their hallmark. That's their landmark. That's what they're known for. And if it's just going to be sequel mania, remake mania, and, you know, by the way, the sequel mania is closely tied to the remake mania. I know when we talk about Mary Poppins Returns, people say, "Oh, well, that's not a remake." It is, though. Mm-hmm. It is. It's in the same vein as, you know, remaking The Lion King, remaking this, remaking that. It's in the same vein. It comes from the same place. It's startling. It's what is the company really going to offer creatively for the future? I don't think there's an answer to that. And the fact that, you know, it's just sad to me, ultimately. I'll pass it over to Alex so that we can have a fruitful conversation, and I'll actually come up with more articulate things to say.
So I was like, usually Matt passes the torch, so I was like, oh, Matt's probably gonna say, okay, yeah, okay. So yeah, to give my opinion, I actually wholeheartedly agree with what Jeremy says. I know a lot of you are like, what? You agree with Jeremy for once? But yeah,
again, we agree more than we disagree, and I know you disagree with that.
Well, all jokes aside, yeah, I think that calling this like the age of revival at the Disney Company is probably pretty fitting, because, you know, I have to agree that true, you can reinterpret a story through the eyes of a new storyteller. You know, it's true that you can take something that you know and develop it into something, into a vision that you have. People do it all the time, you know, and that's what Walt Disney was so good at. You know, he took the stories that people loved, like Cinderella and Peter Pan and all these stories, you know, Alice in Wonderland, and he took what was best out of them and then plussed it, and then he made his own movie out of it. He didn't copy and paste it, you know, from the book and then put it into the movie. He made it Disney. And I think that's what we love about it. I mean, no one's saying that Walt Disney was 100% original. I mean, a lot of times he was, but you know, we all know that a lot of his most famous movies came from stories that he read either as a child or as an adult, you know, and I think that Walt Disney was really good at bringing to people the things that we really want out of the stories. And so, you know, I honestly, he had like this really great way of just being able to understand what the audience wanted as opposed to what they were just getting. And so, anyway, so to add on to this would be that in today's modern day where we're having all these remakes and stuff, I do often complain about it. And the reason is because these remakes are not reinterpretations. They're literally copying and pasting everything from the movies everything from the original Disney classic movies and putting it into the story, maybe with the twist of actually incorporating stuff from the books into it. So, you know, it's like what was one that just recently came out? Well, the Jungle Book remake. I always talk about how I don't like it, but I always bring that as an example because the original Jungle Book movie was just done so artfully and so well, and I loved it, and it was a classic, and it stood out, and it really took Rudyard Kipling's story and then reinterpreted it for children and for people of the modern age. And while I'm open to them remaking the movie and reinterpreting it, it wasn't a reinterpretation. They literally made a movie by cutting the parts out of the original movie or the original Disney movie and putting it into this one, and then taking pieces from the book or other movies that were interpretations and putting it into this one. And then I think the only thing original about this movie was its weird, like, social media type of humor, just the weird modern humor that we have, like just strange humor. And so honestly, it doesn't feel like a reinterpretation of the stories. It just feels like copying and pasting a success in order to make another success. And you know, I watched Beauty and the Beast last night, and I mean, that was actually coincidental. I totally forgot we were doing this segment, but I did watch it last night, and I was like, you know, this is the remake is a good movie, but the only reason why it's good is because they literally took stuff from the other Beauty and the Beast movie and put it in this one. So it's all the same stuff. All the same stuff I like about this movie was the same stuff I liked about the old movie. So what's the difference? And so to conclude with what I'm saying, I just felt like it's up to us as viewers, as fans, you know, as the three of us doing this podcast to enlighten other people and let them know that this isn't what Disney is capable of. They're capable of so much more, and we should encourage them to do that. And if it means boycotting the movies altogether, like what I do, you know, people tell me like, oh, you know, why don't you just watch the movie? I go, because that misses the point. If I go and spend my money on watching these poor remakes, it's just going to lead the company to keep wanting to do it. And so I don't go out to the theater to watch these. You know what I do? If I do see the movie, it's usually because someone else is watching it and I happen to be there. So That sounds awful. Anyway, yeah. So that's what I'm gonna say.
I want to backtrack a little bit because I feel like we should first talk about why we feel. When you put it very well, Matt, about the importance of critiquing the company. I don't understand why people think people shouldn't. If it's something you feel passionately about, it's also an artistic enterprise, if you have an understanding of the standard of quality of the stuff that this company has put out in all of its time of being on the planet, I think it's important to have voices to go, well, this doesn't align with. You have to hold them accountable to their own identity and their own standard. And if the company isn't going to do it themselves, the fans are. It's very easy to view fans who are passionate about something as being complainers, as opposed to having a strong understanding of what something is and being able to hold that thing accountable when it goes in a direction that is unlike itself in a negative way. Mm-hmm. That being said, there are fans who, like, anything will get taken away and they'll be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I remember when the Big Thunder Ranch was closing. And no, I mean, we have to keep on top with the movies, but I'm just going to say, to clear wave to do Star Wars Land. I remember a lot of people going, oh God, I'm going to miss Big Thunder Ranch. How could they take that away? I'm thinking, fine, get rid of Big Thunder Ranch, but put an inspired land there that fits in with, okay, actually, no, this is going to get off topic. So let's stay on topic. Matt, help me out. Drag me out of this. Cut me off. Turn me off.
Well, I guess I should point out, I think you guys already mentioned this, but it is worth noting that Walt's films were mainly adaptations of previously established fairy tales or folklore tales, which like I said, you guys already pointed out. And I guess one of the main questions when it comes to that is, what's the difference between Walt remaking, or I guess interpreting those fairy tales into his own stories, then what's the difference between that than what Disney is doing today, just remaking, Aladdin or remaking Dumbo for a modern audience?
It's a major difference.
Yeah.
There's a major difference, and I think Alex started to highlight that difference very articulately. It's a difference in intention. Drawing from source material to make a piece of art in another medium has been around since civilization began. Early poems, early plays, the early visual arts, early paintings, all came from a culture's religion or mythology. That's source material. Our understanding of ancient cultures and ancient religions and ancient mythology doesn't come from one ultimate text. It comes from the many interpretations of that cultural source material. We read the ancient Greek poets and playwrights to understand the mythology of that society. We look to the arts to have an understanding of that. Drawing from source material is what you do as an artist. It's a relatively recent thing to create a story from thin air, which is a wonderful thing. But even Shakespeare, most of his plays were drawn from source material, either other plays that were done by his contemporaries because they were drawn from the same source material. Only a couple of his plays are completely original. So drawing from source material to create another piece of art in another medium is not the same thing as a institution, huge giant corporation at this point going, we made these successful movies in the past and they were animated, so we can use the formula of those movies and make the same movie, but the gimmick is that it's live action. That's not, as Alex was saying, a reinterpretation of something. Mm-hmm. That's not going to source material of a book or a poem or folklore, myth, global folklore. There's the story of Snow White. Yes, he drew from the German version, but there's versions of the Snow White story in so many different cultures. There's versions of the Cinderella story in so many different cultures. It's fitting to take that as source material and make it into a new medium, animation. This is not that. I don't see how it is. I would love for someone to tell me why it's the same exact thing. It's not the same thing. I will give people this. Some of the movies have been reinterpretations. The Cinderella movie was a reinterpretation. Mm-hmm. Maleficent is a reinterpretation. Yeah. But still, nowadays, like with Aladdin coming out, with Lion King coming out, it seems like, at least in their marketing, they're writing specifically on the idea that it's the same movie, but with CGI and actors. Mm-hmm. And it's a slap in the face to the form that the company invented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alex, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I did a second ago, and I got so lost because I was listening to Jeremy, so I was like, no, I mean, that was that. I was so entranced by what Jeremy was saying that I lost my train of thought because I was just following what he was saying. But yeah. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. So so another thing about this whole, as who said it here? Noel Durr in the comments or chat said that Walt was paraphrasing mm-hmm. the remakes are plagiarizing, and I agree with that, because the thing is like what Walt Disney gave to us when he created all these classics was showing us what you could do with imagination and creativity. Even with your favorite things, like even if you don't create something new and original, there's ways of taking your favorite stories, your favorite things in life, and then reimagining them your way. And I thought that was, amazing. But the thing is that in the past decade, maybe even more, the Disney Company has just been kind of sending off the wrong message, I think, to people, which is that, why do you need to create something new and original when you could just copy what someone else did and get just as much praise for it? It's just, I think it sends the wrong message. I mean, I can understand a few mistakes here and there. It's like, we wanted to do something great with, I don't know, let's just say Beauty and the Beast, and then, oops, it accidentally turned out to be a completely plagiarized story. Okay, well, we'll move on, and the next one will be different. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is it's consistently, every movie is getting more and more plagiarizing of the movies that came before it. And so I think that the company should really be inspiring people to try to be original, to try to create something new, to interpret something their own way, as opposed to just trying to just get by off the skin of their teeth and make a success out of someone else's success. It's just not, it's not what the company is about, and it's not what they should be, showing that. It's not what they should be showing people that they do. It's like, it's just funny because a bunch of other companies were starting to do this before Disney completely got into it. They were starting to just remake all their movies. And then Disney does what they usually do. They see the challenge and they say, but we're going to do it better. Except in this case, they saw the challenge and they're like, we're going to make even more remakes, And so it's just not the message you want to send.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it goes back to what I always say about the company, which is that they it's like they're reading the information wrong. If they look back and go, wow, that movie was successful, let's just remake it, that's the wrong impulse to follow. It should be, why did that hit a chord with the people? Oh, because it was so well done, and look at that, and let's talk to the artists that work on that movie. Let's bring them in. Let's go back to animation. Let's look to other source material. There's infinite amount of myths and fairy tales and folklore that they can do to make some great films. But they're reading the information wrong. They're reading the information wrong. They think it means more of that same thing, instead of, maybe the public wants hand-drawn animation, and great scores and great this and that and that. It's just I don't want to say that, but it is safe. It is safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I just may say, I'm not interrupting you, am I?
No.
Oh, okay. If I just may say, like, when Disney had officially announced that they're dropping hand-drawn animation in favor of CGI and computer animation, that kind of thing, they were touting it as, we're switching over entirely to computer animation because we can do so much more with this medium. But the truth is that's not true at all. You can do just as many amazing things with hand-drawn animation. True, it looks different. I mean, almost entirely. But the real truth behind why Disney dropped hand-drawn animation is because it's expensive. And honestly, that's not the reason to drop something. Did Walt ever say, we're not doing this because it's too expensive? The first thing he said is, it's not technology for technology's sake. It's technology for this. I'm going to screw this up. For the sake of the story, for the sake of the people. So anyway, I think you all know what I meant by that. So don't blame the historian for forgetting something. But anyway, yeah, I just felt like it was, they took their heritage and threw it out the window for the sake of money. And that just wasn't right, It just wasn't right.
Well, what you just said about technology, it really speaks to a larger problem in the culture today, which is the idea that a software update is progress. And it's like that's how companies like to brand themselves in the digital age. It's so easy for things to feel like, that's progress. A new app is progress. This is progress. It's not, and so we have this kind of graveyard of like products that nobody needs because technology is so accessible that every little thing feels like, well, that's progress. Isn't that exciting? No, it's not. And I feel like it's this, CGI is an art in itself. I can't knock that because you look at that first decade of Pixar films and it's like whipping out masterpiece after masterpiece. It's totally in the vein. It understands that it's a separate art form than hand-drawn animation, but it's a form of animation.
Right.
And it's
not a
great.
replacement.
It's not a replacement. I think that's the number one issue that's happened with animation. And then when a small independent studio releases a hand-drawn animated film, whether it's a short film or a feature-length film, you notice how everyone gets so excited? That it's its own special art form. And I think the company that popularized it needs to get with it, and see the opportunity that they have here. And Lord knows they have so many resources that they didn't have when Walt was around, because they were always writing on the skin of their teeth, because each project was a huge investment. They're practically a country today. They have the resources to provide us with endless creativity, and they don't.
Yeah.
You remember that scene in the new Mary Poppins movie where the hand-drawn animation is they have the leaves, fluttering around the characters and stuff. It's just funny because I was talking to somebody at Disneyland, and their kids were like, "Oh wow, I didn't know that stuff was drawn by hand and whatever." And they're like, "That's so cool." And I'm just thinking in my head, boy, if you think that's cool, we need to show you like Snow White or
wait till
Bambi.
Exactly. But that's what's exciting, because if kids can, watch Mary Poppins Returns and go, "Oh my God, I loved that sequence," and you got to have the right parents. But if you're a good parent, you'd go, "Oh, well, I'm going to show you this and that and that." You're going to inspire someone, and that's the whole point. I don't think the Disney company today understands kids.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. I was gonna say as well. It's so weird that they did the hand-drawn animation sequence in Mary Poppins Returns, even though, I mean, it looks amazing. There's definitely people still there. I mean, what little people they have left, at least, who can do hand-drawn animation. There's some real, talent there that shows just within that however long segment it was.
But that's my question. You see, were those people just sitting around the studio for years, just waiting for them to come on? Where do they come from?
No, they aren't these old voices who were sitting around and stuff. No, those are new, not new, but those are, yes, exactly. But it goes to show that people who go into animation, because it's what they're passionate about. And I feel like people who I say this about Imagineering too, but we'll get to that. People who want to become an animator for Disney, it's probably not because they watched, Maleficent, or it's probably because they watched Bambi when they were 10 years old, and it shook them. That's why. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's 100% true. I mean,
there's young people our age. We have a varying age range right now in this show, but young people who are starting out in their careers, young people have knowledge about the history of animation, and they exist. Disney needs to foster those voices. They need to foster those voices.
Yeah. I know at least a handful of people who want to pursue animation as sort of, like their career. And, they say to me, "Oh, I want to animate for Disney." But it's almost like I don't want to tell them that if they do try and pursue that, if they do end up getting a job, quote unquote animating for Disney, that they're just going to be animating the animated sequences for like the projection shows on the castle, because that's really almost all the work that they're going to get, because they don't.
And it's all from my little understanding, so I probably shouldn't even say something. From what I've gathered just in looking on people's social media accounts, who do some amazing hand-drawn animation stuff, not just animation, but just art in general. It seems like they do like an internship with the company, and then they leave, or they're brought in as an independent contractor to work on a sequence in a film, and then they leave. It's not a homegrown thing anymore.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have their team of artists. That they don't have that collaboration anymore, which is what made all of those movies soar. Is because you knew Mary Blair was doing the color styling, and John Hench, was going to be doing. Actually, he did color styling with Mary Blair. They were the color masters, and you knew Claude Coates was going to do those backgrounds. It was a team of artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? It's so process oriented, and I use that word in a negative way because Bob Gurr uses that word in a negative way. He hates that word. It's so mechanical. This gets sent here, this memo gets sent there, this person works on the sequence and sends it there, and nobody goes back to something you always say, Alex, when we talk about the parks. Nobody has any feelings about the stuff that they're putting out.
Yeah. You know what's funny is, like, I've known people over the course of when I used to work at Disney. I met so many people who either wanted to be hand-drawn animators or wanted to be model builders for Imagineering, that kind of thing. And those kind of jobs make me really sad to hear when people want to be those, because I'm like, those jobs are dying. And, and it's like, it makes me sad because for those who want to do hand-drawn animation for the studio, honestly, they're probably going to be working for a third-party company who gets called in once in a while to animate for Disney, because Disney probably doesn't keep those people on a salary. Yeah. Like, they're probably just not there most of the year, if not, sometimes even for 5 years, until they do something like Mary Poppins Returns. And then for those who want to build models at Imagineering, I mean, yes, we've all seen models that are constructed for lands, like, the most recent one was Galaxy's Edge has a model, but that model was made by a computer. That wasn't made by hand. And I think that's so sad, because the models used to be made. There was a whole department. Actually, there's still a model making department, but it's a department full of computers. And so it's just
there's no more Harriet Burns,
Yeah. It's gone. And the art of doing something by hand is completely lost at Disney. And I have hope for the future that maybe those things will come back someday. But as long as computers are cheaper and more efficient at doing their jobs than a person's hands, then I think that it'll probably stay that way. So.
Well, I think it is worth noting, sort of back to the live action remakes part.
Yeah, Matt, guide this conversation, or we're just gonna talk and he has to leave, remember? Okay.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we gotta. Okay, so it is worth noting, I don't think you guys have mentioned this specifically yet, it is worth noting that these live action remakes do make $1 billion+ when they release. I guess the most recent example is Beauty and the Beast, who I believe, I could be wrong. I believe the Beauty and the Beast live action remake is one of the highest grossing movies of all time in America. I could be wrong on that. I could be thinking of a different movie. But please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
Sorry. I mean, we created an awkward situation. I created an awkward situation. I don't want to stop you in the middle of your setup, but the Disney company is so huge that any movie they release is going to bring back millions or billions. I just don't see how that's a litmus test for what the public wants, needs, desires, feels. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. That's a great point to bring up, but I was also going to say,
okay.
I was also going to say, you guys mentioned about how it's not just Disney who is doing these remakes all the time. This is sort of like a plague that is spreading all throughout Hollywood as well, and I feel like Alex and I have talked about this in the past in previous episodes. But yeah, it's almost like the entirety of Hollywood just, for some reason, overnight just ran out of ideas to make like original movies. And I mean, I know that sounds like really weird to say. Original movies are not necessarily the easiest things to come up with. But I did want to bring up a statistic. The Dumbo live-action movie, directed by Tim Burton, which came out last Friday, the 29th, is calculated to pass Jordan Peele's Us at the box office, 48 million to 33. Even though, I mean, of course, Us has been in theaters a week more than Dumbo, but I feel like that's sort of an interesting statistic to bring up. You have very I mean, I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm gonna call it lackluster because that's just what it looks like to me. You have a very lackluster Tim Burton movie in theaters that is gonna most likely pass Jordan Peele, who has proven himself to be a worthy, great director, great horror director in the box office. And that's just very, I don't know, it's really sad to me because I really do enjoy Jordan Peele's work, not just on Key and Peele, but of his filmmaking work as well. Yeah, I just felt like that was another interesting stat to bring up. But
you know, you brought up a good point, which is that Disney has sucked Tim Burton into this little world of theirs.
yeah,
Where they, like how I did that. You know, like in the 90s, Tim Burton had some really creative, really out of this world movies and stuff that I thought were really cool. And even in the early 2000s, he started reimagining stories, just the way I was describing that Walt Disney used to do. He took a story that existed and reinterpreted it into his own way. And I used to think that stuff was really cool. But as the decades progressed, Tim Burton became more and more the Disney company's go-to guy for just changing things up a little bit. I'm not going to say reinterpreting a movie. I'm just going to say like changing things up. I think like I really enjoyed Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. I thought that was actually pretty cool. But then since that came out, everything else has just been really bad when it came to Disney Tim Burton stuff. So yeah, so you brought up a good point, Matt.
Yeah, and it's so strange to me. I mean, I agree. I haven't seen many of Tim Burton's films, but of the ones that I have, he has made some pretty brilliant films. I guess just staying on the topic of him, it's just so strange to see how he's progressed over the past years since he's been with Disney doing these remakes. Because he did, like you said, the first Alice in Wonderland, and he did the second one, and then I feel like there was another one that he did at some point for Disney. I don't know. And now he's doing Dumbo. I don't know. It just feels like the novelty or whatever he did in the past to make his movies stand out is sort of worn off on the audience. And it's so weird because he came from that generation of artists with what's his face? The guy that left Pixar, who created Pixar. I can't remember. What is his name?
Lasseter?
Yeah, John Lasseter.
John Lasseter?
He came from that class of students who were very skilled, almost the same, almost mirroring kind of what was going on in the 30s with Walt and his team. It's just so strange to see how he's progressed from then, and now he's just doing the live action Dumbo remake. I mean, I don't know. Very interesting.
I want to go back to what you were saying initially about Hollywood, and I think it's not that Hollywood has run out of ideas, it's that they aren't fostering the talent. They aren't actively seeking out and setting up the parameters for new voices to have a chance. It is so hard to get started in the arts today. You can't just go knocking on the producers' doors and sending unsolicited scripts. It's impossible. There's a barrier between getting your work seen by people and not. There's a barrier between that. It is so hard to get started in the arts today. It's not just an epidemic happening in the movies. It's an epidemic happening in the theater. It's an epidemic happening for all artists. It's so hard, and I can speak to that personally. It feels impossible. Because you're up against these giant institutions who don't need you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as opposed to, if you're running a creative institution, you should need those new voices. And I think that's something Walt understood very well. You know, I'm reminded of how Raleigh Crump got a job at Disney. He came in with like barely any experience, with a horrible put together portfolio, but he was hired. And you know, what an artist, right? That wouldn't happen today.
No.
Yeah. Well,
you have to have internship after internship. Everything's consolidated. You know, it there's just no chance.
No.
And that's the real problem with Hollywood today and the arts.
Yeah, 100%. Very true. I guess sort of we can segue that into our second topic, which is discussing the parks. Because I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about in regards of this. Same as the films, maybe more. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. The Disney parks have become a staple in American culture since Walt opened the first one in 1955. And since then, I could be wrong on this statistic, but since then, the company has opened 11 different theme parks in 4 different countries around the world. So that sort of shows you how popular Walt's Disneyland was when it comes to, you know, duplicating it to other places for different people. Walt and his collaborators always envisioned Disneyland to continue growing. In fact, there's the famous quote I'm sure you all know very well that the company likes to run into the ground. Quote, Disney, I'm pretty sure this is a paraphrased quote as well. Disneyland will never be complete so long as there is imagination left in the world. Yeah, the way the company has decided to pursue that change, at least, has evolved over the past 60 years since Disneyland has opened, evolved very greatly. Instead of creating an entirely new story for an attraction, Disney has decided to go the route of theming attractions to various IPs, such as Toy Story, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and many more. When it comes to attractions themed to IPs, where should we draw the line? I guess it's also worth noting before we get into this discussion that IP-themed attractions are not a bad thing in any sense. You have attractions like, I guess the big standout for me is the Indiana Jones Adventure in Disneyland, which is one of the greatest attractions Disney's ever done, in my opinion. You do have those standout, almost outlier attractions that are themed to already existing IPs who do very well, who are very well put together, very well themed to the general audience, seems to enjoy very well. And then, you know, you have your other Pixar Pier type attractions. So, yeah, where should we draw the line when it comes to attractions themed to IPs? Let's start with Alex this time.
Okay, so yeah, so to reiterate what Matt had said, IP-based rides are not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, you know how they say too much of anything is just not a good thing? It's the same way for those kinds of rides. Too many IP rides is not a good thing. I think once in a while they should spice it up with something, you know, that is original. I don't mind if it's on like a 5-to-1 ratio, but you know, give us something original, you know? And I understand fully that basically, you know, the turnstile clicks dictate what rides, you know, people want to ride. But I think that when a original ride is done correctly, people will go through those turnstiles. You know, it's just got to be done correctly. And if they make an original ride that fails, well, you know, that happens. But they shouldn't just stop making them. They should just try harder, make better ones, keep going, you know, like don't, you know, as they say, like when you fall off the horse, you just get back on, you know, you don't just stop, you don't give up. And I feel like what Disney's done in the recent decades is they've just given up on doing anything original because they're like, hey, you know, like, you know, we can't satisfy everybody, so might as well find something that satisfies everybody. And, and I'm just like, that's not how things should work. So to go to the topic about, like about IP versus non-IP, I love things like Cars Land. When I go to DC, I recently did a vlog where I went to DCA and I showed people the things I do like about DCA. I loved Buena Vista Street. That to me was pretty original. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Disney's ever really done something like Buena Vista Street at a Disney park. Are you gonna correct me? Anyone gonna correct me? Okay. All right, moving on. So I thought that was really great. And then to give something to people that's familiar, they created Cars Land. And I thought that was just a great little ratio to balance things out. And so, yeah, I'd like to see more original. And Disney can do it. I always say, look at Phantom Manor. I'm sorry, not Phantom Manor. Mystic Manor. Mystic Manor at Hong Kong Disneyland. Oh, gosh, they got to stop naming things Manor. Anyway, Mystic Manor, I thought was really awesome. I mean, I'm not a fan of trackless rides because I just think you can do so much more without them. But anyway, I thought that the story of Mystic Manor and the characters it introduced and the adventure you go on was just so amazing. I almost wish we had one here in Anaheim, and Disney can do things like that, create something so special and so unique and so different, and they just don't. And the obvious answer is because if they can make a ride out of a very, very successful and provenly successful movie or series by Disney, then they're going to opt for that because they know the ride will be successful, even if it's a lousy ride. I'm going to take a jab here at Disney. Guardians of the Galaxy, the tower at DCA. I really don't like it because I feel like it took something which was decently original, such as the Tower of Terror. For all intents and purposes, the story was created by Disney for the Florida version, and then we got ours later. But in any case, I thought that the Tower of Terror at DCA, while it lacked in its ability to tell a proper story, it was still an attempt, and it was successful for all intents and purposes. It was successful for decades, and I just felt like, okay, well, if they had to change it, which some people tell me they had to, if they had to change it, they should have changed it into something else that was unique, something else that made sense. But instead, they're like, hey, we're going to turn this ride into something way more successful by taking, the Guardians of the Galaxy movie and turning it into a ride. And I thought, oh, this is their chance to add all these elaborate sets, all these elaborate things from the movie. And instead it's like, oh, you get video screen, and and what's amazing is people come off the ride, they're like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing, it was so immersive. I'm like, what about it was immersive? You were sitting down in a chair watching a screen. You were basically in a movie theater that drops. So, I just felt like, I think part of my complaint here is that sometimes I think that the fans, while they did enjoy their experience, and I have no doubt that they had fun because they liked the thrill, I think that well, I can't think of specific words to say, so I'm just going to give an example. You know how even a decent movie, you can walk out and say, I loved that movie, when even though we all know that the word love is like usually reserved for the best, the favorite, but people use the word love for almost anything that they refer to now. And I forget what it's called. There's actually like a new definition for it. It's how people tend to over exaggerate their admiration for something, even though it didn't live up to what they're saying it did. So, what does Jeremy know? What? I don't know. I thought I heard him. I thought he was about to talk. Anyway, so to finish what I'm saying, I felt that a lot of people, when they went to Pixar Pier and all that, they came back over exaggerating how great it was. I have no doubt that Pixar Pier is fun, and it provides you with things that you haven't been able to do, such as ride on a strange carousel with strange creatures that Jesse is rollicking and rounding up. I don't know what that's about, but anyway, there's that. Or you can hear a family argue on a roller coaster. So I have no doubt that you probably can't get those experiences anywhere else. But just because you can't get those experiences anywhere else doesn't make it the best. And I think people just need to, I don't know, just stay objective about what they're experiencing and give credit where credit's due, but also to give critique and criticism to where it's due as well.
Yeah, I feel like before we continue this, I should say a large majority of this discussion is going to be about I guess a large majority of our critiques is going to be about the US parks, because, if you look at things like Tokyo Disney Sea, even though out there you're getting more IP-based, lands and attractions in the coming years, I feel like those are almost excluded, because just because of how differently those parks are handled than the U.S. parks. Yeah, I just felt like I had to say that, and I would also like to say about the Guardians of the Galaxy. I do feel like that specific attraction is most definitely riding on the success of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, because if I'm understanding it correctly, if I'm remembering correctly, the Guardians of the Galaxy attraction came out, I want to say like a month before the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out. So I do agree with Alex that attraction is like a perfect example when it comes to what we're discussing. But yeah, Jeremy, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Of course. Yeah, everything Alex said was...
actually,
what?
Before Jeremy gives his opinions, it is sadly time for Alex to leave us.
What am I gonna
do?
Well, thank you, Alex.
Thank you, guys.
No, I need you.
If only I heard that more often. All right, this was awesome. Thank you, everybody, and continue the conversation, because this will be so interesting to watch.
What am I gonna do? I need someone to bounce ideas off. If it's okay, I understand.
Well, thank you, Alex.
Well, Matt's pretty bouncy.
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty bouncy. Thank you, Alex. We will see you here next week. Yeah, I guess everybody say bye, Alex.
Bye, bye, everybody.
Oh, bye. Oh, no.
All right, it's just you and me now,
There he
Jeremy.
goes. Oh, God.
Okay. Anyways, you were saying.
Oh, my goodness. I was saying, everything Alex said is yes, absolutely. My overall ideas, rides based on movies are fine, but the fundamental point of critique from the Disney fan community is this, and I think it often is not interpreted this way. But the point of the critique is that rides based on movies are fine. Mm-hmm. But the fundamental thing is you have to consider what park and land you are designing them for. It shouldn't be, oh, well, we want to have a Guardians of the Galaxy attraction. Let's put it there. It should come, the idea for it should come from, we want a new attraction for Adventureland. Let's see. We have this partnership with George Lucas. We could do Indiana Jones and it could be a temple. It needs to come more organically from the fabric of the parks themselves, which is why Indiana Jones works effortlessly into Adventureland. Mm-hmm. Now, then again, you had people at the time go, how dare this new attraction based on something not Disney, invade a little bit of, they had to reroute the Jungle Cruise because of it. How dare it invade, the Jungle Cruise? And I think over time we've realized, wow, this attraction works wonderfully. But it came from a genuine and organic place to put something new that fit into Adventureland, which is the whole point of the Historyland video on Indiana Jones Adventure. But there's a difference between that and, Tower of Terror has run its course. It's a well-respected and loved attraction. Everyone knows it. It's had its place in popular culture. Let's get rid of it. I mean, it was such a jarring decision. I don't think, even if you love the attraction, even if you thought it was a good idea at the time of the announcement, I think there was I think there was a general consensus that, okay, unexpected, weird, but I'll give it a shot, or unexpected, weird, and oh my goodness, what? That was more like me. And to talk about that attraction, and I've talked about, I went on it for the first time over the summer, and I do this thing. I was such a harsh critic of that ride. From the second it was announced. I have a very personal attachment to Tower of Terror. It's a great attraction. I mean, the California version is Tower of Terror Light. It's not the best version of the ride, but it's still exciting. And I hated the idea of that attraction being just having this overlay. And when I do this thing, I did it for Pandora and Animal Kingdom too. I hate it. And then I get there and that all goes out the window and you're like, all right, I'm excited to go on a new attraction and experience something new. So I feel like I become very the bias kind of goes out the window when I'm experiencing it. And I got to tell you, it's a fun ride. But it has major flaws that Alex, I think, pointed out perfectly. The theming, I feel like, is almost toned down from what was there before because of the screens. I don't think it works well. I don't think it fits. And because Tower of Terror was constructed for an atmosphere of tension and suspense, whereas Guardians of the Mission Breakout's supposed to be adventure. You're going on an adventure, you're going to break people. And it's just the structure of the queue and the attraction. It doesn't foster that kind of experience. And I thought that was a flaw. But I don't want to go off on that. But the epidemic that we're critical of is not just there should be no attractions based on movies. It's that there is no active, from what it seems, consideration from the company. I don't know who is in charge, really. I don't know if to blame the Imagineers. I don't know who to blame. But there's no active consideration of what you're designing for, and that is a fundamental principle passed down from the first generation Imagineers. You have to consider the place you are designing for. It doesn't seem like they do that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'd like to talk about Pixar Pier because I feel like this fits into what you're saying, perfectly almost. Because I believe when they first announced Pixar Pier was going to be a thing, they were sort of, I think the description was on the lines of, oh, what if your favorite Pixar characters, visited a seaside pier? Wouldn't that be awesome? And, you look at the concept art and it's like, oh, okay, nothing's going to change? What? And, I don't know. It's just very interesting.
Yeah, Pixar Pier, a lot like Mission Breakout, was a very jarring announcement, I remember being like, well, what's wrong with the pier currently? In fact, the new pier was like, oh, this is fantastic. This is a major improvement from the original Paradise Pier. It's wonderful. The vintage Disney cartoon kind of theme fit wonderfully into like an old fashioned, boardwalk, California boardwalk. It was wonderful. It just felt so absurd that they would, again, you have to consider what you're designing for. It's like, yeah, absolutely. It's a good example.
Yeah, sort of on the same topic. I'd like to spill some tea to you guys regarding this whole. This is just still on topic.
Snapple.
I'd like to spill some Snapple with you guys. I do have some friends who used to work for the Disney Company. One of them told me, I'm not going to say who, of course, I mean, obviously. They told me that Pixar Pier, I think I've said this on the show at some point, but it wasn't, in the same context of this discussion. But they told me that Pixar Pier was not planned for California Adventure. It was just sort of on the lines of, I don't know, some CEO, Bald Chapek. I don't know. It could have been Eisner. Woke up one morning, and had the bright idea pop into their head. Hey, what if we retheme the pier, but just had random Pixar characters everywhere? From my understanding, that's almost exactly how it went, and that's why you see, Jesse's Critter Carousel opening however many months later. It just opened on Friday, actually, for those of you guys listening.
Wait, so what was it designed for originally? Because you said you have people who work there who said it wasn't originally intended for California Adventure. Then wait,
no.
So, okay, well, no. What did you?
It's just like I said, just like a random CEO, whoever it was, woke up one morning and just had the idea popped into their head that they were going to retheme Paradise Pier to have Pixar characters, and then I don't know. The next day they decided to go through with it, and then I guess sort of announce it.
I see.
Yeah.
Actually, I like to entertain the idea that it was like something that was really planned and like processed and like slated, and it was like it went through a series of memos, and it was it took about a good year and a half of marketing surveys and research and stuff and guest surveys to come to the conclusion that people like Pixar, and therefore and they sent a memo to so and so. Okay, yes, according to our marketing research, people like Pixar, and they also like Paradise Pier. Therefore, we can do Pixar Pier. That's just the kind of corporate thinking that is an epidemic in the world, in the creative institutions. That's what I like to think it was. Just total nothing. No feeling, no passion, no ideas, just totally mechanical, robotic. Okay, marketing research says this. We did. Fact, one of them was even simulated by a computer. The questions were asked were put together by a computer, and it went out to several email addresses, and people wrote back that this and that, and they filled in A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and that's how you get something like Pixar Pier. Nothingness. Totally apathetic. Void of emotion.
I feel like it would have been funnier if what you said happened, but I feel like this example sort of gives way to it gives you an insight as to how, at least from this side, at least in DCA regarding, I don't know if this will apply to Disneyland or for, Walt Disney World, but it gives you a little bit of insight into the way the parks company, whether it be, I don't know, Imagineering or, I don't know, Bald Chapek, it could be either way, anybody in the company. It gives you an insight as to how the parks are being treated nowadays, how the parks are being run, like I said, just waking up randomly one morning, having the idea, the crazy idea of theming, making Pixar Pier, and then going through with it, and then realizing, oh, we can't have all these new, quote-unquote, new attractions open for the opening day. we'll just charge everybody $300 to visit an uncompleted Pixar pier, and then we'll use all the money from that to fund Jesse's Critter Carousel, and then we'll mail we'll box
Oh, they
up,
have the money.
I mean, yeah, but and then we'll box up Flick's flyers to send it wherever it's going to get repainted. It'll come back in a year and a half. Everybody will completely forget that attraction's supposed to be there, and then when we announce when it's going to open, people are going to be like, "Oh, yay, a new Pixar Pier attraction. That's going to be cool." Even though it was in the concept art for the original concept art that they released for Pixar Pier, I don't know. Yeah, that just sort of gives an insight as to how the parks, like I said, are being treated nowadays, and it's just really sad to me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going back to IP in the parks, it also, and this is a point, an overall point I wanted to save for the end, kind of the conclusion of the conversation, but I won't. I'll try to kind of write around that, so I can save that for the end. But where did I have this? Oh yeah, it's just with what the Walt Disney Company is today. This multimedia conglomerate owns so many different properties that aren't homegrown, that aren't Disney. But they like bought them, so they own them, but it's not really Disney. It's like, what IP feels Disney enough to belong in a Disney park? I think that's another question we need to consider, is if for some reason, some hypothetical situation, like Universal couldn't have the Simpsons rides in their parks anymore. And because Disney owns them now, basically, would it be easy for us to go, oh, the Simpsons is Disney? I don't think so. And I personally, I feel the same way about Star Wars. Star Wars different though, because they formed a creative partnership with George Lucas before, but with the Marvel stuff, it is hard for me to drop into that and go, oh, that feels like Disney. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Whereas with and people always like to pull the Fantasyland example out. Well, there's already IP in the park. But that's Disney. That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. So there's two fundamental bases of the critique of IP in the park that Disney fans really mean when they talk about this stuff. And this is summarizing so we can move on. But it's that you have to consider the park and the land that you are designing for. And if organically an IP fits into that land and can be integrated with the experience of that land, it doesn't juxtapose the aesthetic of that land, by all means, if you can do it, do it. And also, with all of the properties the company owns, and this is more of a philosophical question, I guess, but what feels Disney enough to belong in a Disney park? I think those are the two main bases of the critique that Disney fans put out. Because oftentimes you hear I'm always trying to bring this conversation back to why it's necessary to critique the company. Because so often you hear the argument, Disney owns it now, so it fits into the park, and you shouldn't complain about it, and you're just complaining about any change at all. And no, I don't think that's true. I think there is a fundamental basis for that critique, and it's those two, I think, big questions. So yeah.
That's a good point. I've seen people, I guess jokingly say, "Oh, Disney owns Family Guy." Someone just said in chat, "Family Guy Pier." I mean, they could totally do that. I mean, But yeah, like you said, what feels Disney enough to put in a Disney park? I don't know. That's that's an interesting question. I guess going back to what you said earlier, though.
Like Pixar does.
Yeah.
Pixar at this point, you ask people, list your top 10 favorite Disney movies. And, oftentimes you'll have people go, Up, Toy Story. Pixar does feel Disney enough. Okay, so that parameter was met. You have to consider the land and park you're designing for. Okay, that's where Pixar pier falls flat. That's where it fails, right? So I think those are the two fundamental things. What were you going to? I didn't want to interrupt you. What were you going to say?
Going back to what you said earlier about how, the IP has to service the land properly. Star Tours is another amazingly perfect example of how Tony Baxter, fit that IP into the land.
Yes and no. I think with the way Tomorrowland was in '98, they kind of resurfaced the land to be more of a creative vision of science fiction of the future that Star Tours worked. But that's actually one of the critiques I have of the only critique of Star Tours that I have, which is I don't know if it would have fit into Tomorrowland very well in the Tomorrowland that it was in. But maybe it did. And it probably did because the way Star Wars was viewed then was less of like, I think that the aim was, this is a visionary filmmaker. These are filmmaking techniques of the future. This is a ride system of the future. I think that would have been more of the way the ride was processed then. Whereas at a certain point it was, it's Star Tours, beloved franchise that makes billions of dollars. And especially the way the attraction is now, it's just an advertisement.
Yeah.
It bugs me to no end. They couldn't even stay consistent with the new concept for the attraction. That's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. I agree with you.
Listen, I love Star Tours and I love Tony Baxter to no end, but that's the thing. It's still valid to critique. Because it comes from a place of passion. It comes from a place of love and understanding and knowledge. Anyway, continue.
I'd like to circle back to what you guys were talking about earlier when it comes to... I didn't want to talk about this when we were talking about the films, but I feel like this applies more when it comes to the parks. What you guys were saying when it comes to having all those people who can collaborate with each other. And I'm sure we've said this on the show before about how there's never going to be that atmosphere ever again in Walt Disney Imagineering, or I guess it maybe even in the company as a whole, where you have your like you said, your Claude Coates, your Harriet Burns, those people. I mean, you can't replace those people, and especially with the way that the company is set up now. With the joke that you were making earlier about how memos running back and forth to every different department, that's just not how. That's just not the kind of I guess community that makes those people flourish.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the memo bearer back in the day would have been Walt, actively going into each department, talking to the janitors. Is this good? It's very different, to say for lack of a better.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that briefly, but I'd like to move on to, I don't know, I'd like to move on to Galaxy's Edge. I feel like this is the big crux of this
Good
conversation.
Segue, yeah.
With Galaxy's Edge opening later in Disneyland very shortly, this marks the single largest land expansion added to a Disney park. How does that fit into the grand scheme of theming in Walt's original park? Spoiler, it doesn't.
Yeah, and they make that actually very clear in the way they're integrating the land into the park. It's both in Disneyland but outside of the boundaries of Disneyland, which makes it very clear. They couldn't find a way to make it work in Disneyland.
Yeah.
But they had to go ahead and do it anyway. You know, I think that's a problem. And given and then the cherry on top is its size.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, they're trying to make it not affect the rest of the Disneyland experience. It's kind of like a separate experience within Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be hard for that place not to feel like a different park. It really is. It breaks my heart. But it really is. It really, ever since they announced Star Wars Land, Disneyland has felt different. Maybe that's just a personal, bias. But ever since there was that thought that there would be something so unlike the park, like invading the park like a tumor, physically, it's so huge. It's all, every time I go back, it's always like something else is lost, a small detail, a tree, a this or that.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and that's fine, that's also part of the park changing and growing. But again, going back to what you said, it's the intent of that growth. If they were making a new land, if all of a sudden Frontierland and New Orleans converged at that back of the river, and you're all of a sudden in a new city, you're at a coastal city, if or something else that, like Tony Baxter's long lost Discovery Bay, something that would be on the precipice of the 19th century and fantasy, Fantasyland being right there. That's how you integrate a new land into the park, because it works. It fits into the park's themes. I think it was Joe Rohde who wrote, he goes on these amazing diatribes about the art of theme park design on Instagram. And I think it was him who wrote about this, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm not going to go back through Instagram and try to find it. And now, of course, that I've just rambled, I don't remember what I was going to say. I don't remember what I was going to say. Anyway, well, it'll come back to me. But it just goes back to what we were talking about before. You have to understand the park you're designing for. It should have been a red flag when they feel like, oh, if we have to block this off from the rest of the park experience, should it not be a park of its own? And it's telling in the announcement that we started with today. People may want to be in that land all day.
Yeah.
What? You're at Disneyland. They should have made another park. And then we could go, okay, well, I don't personally think theme parks should just be about franchises, but I'm sure it's a great park. Now, but when it's in Disneyland, it's like, the basis, let me go back to this being a defensive critique. The basis of the critique of Galaxy's Edge is less about there should be an immersive physical way to experience the Star Wars franchise than it doesn't work in Disneyland. Aesthetically, thematically. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I don't know if it was John Hench. It's either John Hench or Joe Rohde, like the two Disney philosophers of their generation, who said that, I think it was Joe Rohde, we come to think of like theme as like theming, like, oh, it's themed to a 1950s, suburb, but theme actually has so much more of a meaning than just the way something. It is John Hench actually who said this. Theme has such a stronger more profound meaning than just what something looks like. It's about what's underneath it. Like when we talk about, if you're in an English class, what's the theme of the book? You're not thinking, well, it's, Great Gatsby's theme to the 1920s. No, it's it's the American dream. It's the it's the lies we tell ourselves. Theme has such a more powerful meaning than just, Main Street's themed to a Midwestern town. No, the theme of Main Street is change, progress. It's a thesis statement. Main Street USA is supposed to be, an active, living, breathing, moving fantasy of a Midwestern town on the verge on the precipice of 2 centuries. Mm-hmm. It has the look and feel and quaintness of a 19th century town. But if you look underneath, there's lamps being, the gas lamps being replaced with the electric light. There's women fighting for their right to vote. There's there's horse-drawn carriages being replaced with automobiles. It's living, breathing. There's a movie house showcasing moving images, and it used to, show actual silent films, not just, Disney cartoons. And the shops were unique. They were actual shops. They weren't just places you could go in and then buy a plush, thing and a new phone case. Mm-hmm. No, you could walk away with an authentic souvenir from this fantastical. There's so much more to the word theme than I think we have come to know it as today. It's not just the way something looks. It's what it is. It's the ideas driving it. And I think that is lost completely in the Disney parks today. Like they only give theme in detail the time of day when it is attached to like an IP, like Galaxy's Edge is going to be nuanced and detailed and wonderful. But Main Street, as far as I'm concerned today, and it's one of my favorite places in the entire park, is a mall. Mm-hmm. It's a mall. It's a mall themed to, a nondescript, 19th century Main Street. It isn't this living, breathing thesis statement about what you're about to experience. And that's a harsh criticism. And it's all in the details. But it's true. It's true. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to, I'm going to actually pull up a quote from John Hench, who says, "For all its success, the Disney theme show is quite a fragile thing. It just takes one contradiction, one out-of-place stimulus to negate a particular moment's experience." And he goes on to say, "If you took a streetcar conductor's costume away and put him in a double-knit slacks and a golf shirt, replace that old gay 90s melody with a rock number, replace the themed merchandise with digital clock radios and electric hair dryers, tack up a felt-tip drawn paper sign that says keep out, place a touch of AstroTurf here, add a surly employee there, it doesn't really take much to upset it all." And he's right. And boy, is the park upset with all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a beautiful sort of thing that you just said. I don't really know how to...
And we're now down viewers.
I don't know what to say to that. Is that just, I agree 100%. That was really wonderfully said. Yeah, I guess we can move on from Galaxy's Edge now.
Even though that had like nothing to do. Listen, okay, if you miss the substance of that, I love Main Street. I'm not complaining about Main Street. I'm critiquing that what we've come to know a theme park as is something completely different than what they are, what the potential for them is. Mm-hmm. That's my point. And I think that's the basis of the critique of people who are so nitpicky about details in the parks. Oh, they're taking away that sign. No. Well, according to John Hench, something as little as a sign can make all the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I don't know. I agree 100%. I'd like to segue briefly. I want to talk about Epcot.
Okay.
Because I feel like Epcot is sort of the culmination of everything we've been saying for the past, I don't know, however long we've been on the topic of the parks. As many of you may know, Epcot opened as a sort of symbol of hope for the rest of the world, as well as a homage, kind of, to Walt's final wish, the original Epcot. Now, as many of you may know, the park has lost so much of its meaning. It's almost transformed into a completely different park itself. So I'd like to briefly hear your thoughts on the direction Epcot is heading, the direction it's been heading the past couple of years, and now sort of with Disney trying to quote-unquote revive the original Epcot, whether or not that's true or not. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think overall, and then I'll, probably go on another diatribe, but I think overall what it amounts to is Disney has this, Epcot is the prime example of this. But with the case of Epcot, it's a case of the company scapegoating their neglect on, people don't want it. So they're using the public as a scapegoat for their own neglect of the park. Mm-hmm. So they'll let something like Universe of Energy rot for 20 years, 20 years, and then go, well, it was time to get rid of the Energy Pavilion. It was outdated. Nobody went on it anymore. Mm-hmm. So we need Guardians of the Galaxy, to come in and save the pavilion. No, they let it. They neglected that attraction for 20 years. That attraction felt outdated a year after that after Ellen's Energy Adventure premiered in 1996. Okay. It was, listen, that was the version of that pavilion that I grew up with. And when I first went on it in 2001 as a 5-year-old, it was amazing. But what was amazing about it was the experience of it. I didn't realize, because I was 5, that the theater would move. And then you go into the dinosaurs. It's a thrilling experience. And, as you get a little older and you research the history of stuff, the original concept for that pavilion is inspired. It's wonderful. And but that's what they've done. They've let the park rot because a noble idea like an Epcot Center, an educational facility, really, an educational place for the public. It's not Disneyland. It's not the Magic Kingdom. It's Epcot. It's something completely different. And all theme parks now have to be alike. Theme park is a word we throw out there. It's like theme park. It means, you go experience this and that and it's thrills. It's become an amusement park again. It's not what Walt sought out to do as a separate art form, entertainment art form. Epcot is not the Magic Kingdom. The problem with winning the public over on Epcot has been, it was hard, I think, to get the public on board with the idea that you could have a different type of theme park that was meant for the purposes of inspiration, instruction, education, learning about culture, learning about science, learning about, it's not just a science park. I don't like how people say that. It's something much more than that. It's almost like it's a park about anthropology. You go to our human species origins and you learn how we've built ourselves, built our cultures, built our ideas, built our contributions, and then you run around and learn about the problems facing today and the solutions that we're working on, and then you go and you experience the world cultures that have formed from all of those building of ideas and how we can all come together to create more ideas. It's a fantastic idea. It's bold, it's ambitious, it's important, it's necessary, always necessary. It bugs me to no end how Disney, we need to make Epcot timeless and relevant. What's more timeless and relevant than that? What is more timeless or relevant than the fundamental idea, theme, going back to that, of that park? humanity, civilization. There's nothing more relevant and timeless than that. That's the answer to that question. That basically sums up my overall opinion about where that park is headed. They're trying. Listen, to put it in simple terms, they don't know the company because it's a huge corporation and stiff and robotic. They don't know what to do with an idea like that. Mm-hmm. So they're making it a science adventure park. You know, they don't know how to treat a noble idea like that because they don't have the artists to do that because they got rid of them.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have the time. You know, don't be fooled. What they're doing, and of course, we won't have the full picture till D23, and I say that with confidence. We will have the full proposed plan for Epcot this August. So I'm speaking on speculation when I say this. But don't be fooled. What they're doing to Epcot, what they're planning on doing in Epcot, is not saving the park. It's the same neglect. It's dismissal. Well, what the heck is this park? Well, just, put that in there. Mm-hmm. Put Frozen in there. Norway. Who cares about Norway? Energy. Well, we can't be too controversial. Let's put Guardians of the Galaxy in there. It's the same dismissal and neglect that it faced during the Eisner years. It's just masked as it's an overhaul, but it's still the same dismissal. Don't be fooled. And I have something I wrote down earlier about Epcot I'm going to share. Oh, yes. Overall, thoughts on Epcot. If there's one thing I want to work toward disproving, it's the idea that because Walt wasn't involved in creating Epcot Center, that somehow its future doesn't matter. The artists who worked on Epcot were an extension of Walt, and their artistic vision and voices, in my opinion, are worth defending. That's my overall opinion, and counter to the argument you so often hear about, you're just complaining about change to Epcot, is, well, it wasn't Walt's original idea anyway, so it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. I think it absolutely matters. Walt wasn't the only artist. He had a team. They all worked on Epcot Center. They all created those seminal attractions. There's a reason people still talk about them today. As short-lived as they were probably the most experimental and influential in how Disney fans, the standard that Disney fans hold up attractions to. We hold a standard to those attractions and experiences. Mm-hmm. There's something to be said for that. And it's because it was created by all of that team and the new blood that was being mentored by that team, that original team. I think those voices are worth defending.
Wow, okay. Yeah, all right. That was really beautifully said. Yeah, I don't know. I agree. I don't know what to add to that because that was so.
You're bringing something out in me today, Matt. I don't know what it is.
No, yeah, I agree 100% with everything you just said. I just like to take a second to appreciate every single original Epcot fan. You see at least hundreds of them on Twitter. There's a bunch of websites dedicated to. Yeah. Like the original Epcot Center idea. I don't know. I just really appreciate every single one of those fans who do what they do. I don't know. They're passionate about the park, and it shows. And yeah, I just like to give a shout out to them.
I do too.
We need more. We need them to work on Epcot.
It's funny. They seem to. I agree. They all those. People in the Disney fan community who are like the Epcot, are in the Epcot party in a way. They're like the Epcot defenders. They're, they always have this sense that they're almost like the great philosophers of the Disney fan community.
Yeah.
They're always sharing insight into what we've been talking all about today. And that just shows the profound effect and example that a park like Epcot doesn't have anymore, probably will never have again. That's the thing, all the other parks are going to be destroyed. It's sad. We're seeing it with Hollywood Studios right now, currently, and we'll get a better picture about how they're going to do that very same thing to Epcot, I think, this summer. They will never be able. They will try their hardest, and they will try. But Disneyland is the truest timeless one of them all. They will have a very hard time trying to destroy the spirit of that park.
Yeah. No, yeah. I agree again, 100%.
Because even with all of these changes in Disneyland, you still go. And it is that experience. It is that sacred. It's profound what the experience of going to that park is like. They will have a very hard time trying to destroy the spirit of that park.
Yeah. No, yeah. 100% true. Nate asked, are there any opening day attractions left at Hollywood Studios? I think Indiana Jones... is that one? I think the Indiana Jones...
I don't know. I don't know the
show.
history of that park well enough. But it's still, in that question, there's that really good point. And the kind of the thing that's been circulating on the internet lately is how Disney's starting to promote the 30th anniversary of Hollywood Studios when they just destroyed the park.
Yeah.
It's like, and I don't use that word in an exaggerated way. I think that's fitting. They're, remolding the park to a new theme, a new idea, which is why Galaxy's Edge will work wonderfully in that park. I notice how I never mention Hollywood Studios in my critique of Galaxy's Edge. But it's funny. For celebrating the 30th anniversary of the park, you just took out the life out of the history of that park. What is there going to be to celebrate? They're not. That hint, spoiler, they're not going to celebrate the history of the park. They're going to promote the future of the park. Yeah. There's your spoiler for how they're going to do the 30th anniversary. But yeah.
I mean, hey guys, if you like the Cars franchise, you're going to love Hollywood Studios. Anyways, I guess we can sort of wrap up that discussion about the parks. Now I'd like to move on to the Fox Disney deal. Like I said last week, Alex and I teased that we would go more in depth on this during this episode. And that... Well,
you have me instead.
Yeah. We will most certainly...
Although it's a shame. It's a shame. I'd love to have Alex here to talk more in depth about it because I don't know the details and he always knows the details and the inside scoop. So I'm only gonna provide that philosophical point of view. So I wish Alex will come back in.
Alex, please, you gotta come back, buddy.
No, it's okay.
Well, the one note that I did write down regarding the Fox Disney deal is that 3,000 plus people will be losing their jobs because of the merger. Mostly Fox executives, and I feel like that's a good starting point.
Sure, yeah, that's what happens with mergers. It's a restructuring. It's a giant restructuring of not just Fox but of the Walt Disney Company itself. So there's going to be a lot of shuffling and shifting around, and kind of like a conquered country.
Yeah, city that's a great
after a war. I'm sure Fox right now looks like Dresden after the bombing in World War II. Shattered. The Fox Disney deal speaks to something larger in America today. Not just America, actually global. The Western world. Well, actually, it's not just the Western world, but global. I don't want to make this political, and it's not political, but just the globe today. the power of huge, I almost don't want to use the word corporation because that almost has a political connotation to it, but the power of huge institutions taking over the world. They are the countries of the world today. You know, we have countries, but it's like these big companies seem to run the world, you know. It's a scary thing. Every time there's a new major merger announced, be cautious. That's not innovation. That's not, they're going to sell it like it is. It's not innovation. It's actually the opposite. It doesn't fuel variety. It's scary. It also makes me think, you know, it was handled so well. It was mutual. It makes me think that, you know, Iger would be willing to sell Disney to the highest bidder. Like if it was a good deal, if it was a good deal, I don't see why he would merge with another company. You know, it's exactly what Walt feared. This merger, this type of thing, this shareholder politics is exactly the kind of thing Walt was afraid of happening after he died. You know, it's, as far as I'm concerned, the Fox Disney deal, we started with 3,000 people losing their jobs, and I'm just ranting again. But so feel free, Matt, to cut me off and guide me in this conversation, because it, not to be pessimistic, but with this deal, Disney is gone, as far as I'm concerned. And that was very clear the day the merger started, and you went on the website and it was just filled with all the properties that they own, and it's not Disney. It's called Disney. It's not Disney. This is not Disney. Disney's gone. Disney's dead. It's done. It's over. It doesn't exist anymore. To put it in a better term, it doesn't exist anymore. I think literally. I don't think that's like a philosophical statement. I don't think it exists anymore. It's just this company that swallows up other companies and owns different properties and spouts them out, and they just want to own everything. They want to control the entertainment industry. And that's it. It's just acquiring product. They're not going to create anything new. You're nuts if you think that. You know, it's done. It's over. Now, don't make me end on that note. Guide me through this conversation, because that pick my mind, please.
Let's see. Well, I don't know. The Disney Fox deal, I feel like, I mean, there's parts of me that agree with you. I mean, you know, but I feel like a lot of this could sort of tie back to the Disney Plus streaming service as well that they're working on. I mean, whatever part that played in regards to Disney buying Fox, I have no idea. A lot of people are just assuming that it's so they can fill up their service with as many films as possible. Again, like you said, to dominate the movie streaming service industry, so they won't be, you know, beat out by people like Netflix or Hulu, which Disney basically owns Hulu now as well. So there's that.
I know someone just wrote in the chat, nothing quite like being told Disney's dead on a podcast about Disneyland. You know, yes, thank you for bringing me back down from that, because again, we need to always try to bring this back to why it's important to critique, and we'll get there. I'm sure we'll get there in the conversation, but it's true. Nothing quite like being told. It's true, but that says a lot, right? If that's the topic of discussion on many Disney people who eat up Disney's mind, I think that's valuable. But going back to what you said, Matt, I'm starting to think that Disney Plus and the Fox merger has very little to do with each other. I think it's a cherry on top. Oh, great. Now we can stream Alien. You know, now we can have this movie and that movie and this movie and that movie. 80 years worth of movies. I mean, it's great. But I think it's been in the works far longer than it's been in the public's minds. I think about when Pandora was announced for Animal Kingdom years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it started then. I think it was a strategy. We'll make a land based on Avatar, which is owned by Fox, and we'll work on buying that company, bringing it under the umbrella of the Walt Disney Company, and now we own that property. It's all an elaborate strategy. There's something bigger going on. You know, I doubt they would put that much effort. That's a huge deal. Buying a major movie studio that's been around for decades, since the beginning, that's a huge deal. I don't think people give that much time in the conversation about this. A movie studio just bought a major movie studio with a lot of history. It has its own identity. They bought a movie studio that has its own identity.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my mind immediately goes to, well, what are they doing with Hollywood studios? Now they have all of these decades worth of 20th Century Fox films. They didn't need to get rid of the Great Movie Ride. They could have made a new one.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's something else going on, and it's an epidemic that's just happening in the corporate world today. Corporations are unlike anything they have ever been in the history of corporations.
Mm-hmm.
They're too powerful. There's something else going on. It's not just, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Rob, from the last time Rob Plays was on the show, he said something along the lines of how he can't wait for like the book to come out about this era of the Disney Company. I feel that. I feel you, Rob. I felt you when you said that more than ever.
I do. Yeah, I think that's very well said by him. But I think he needs to realize that people like him, channels like him, Defunctland, us, we are the book. We have the opportunity to be that book, and this is why it goes back. It's important to critique. It's important to comment. It's important to not just go, oh, wow, they bought Fox. That means they can put this and that in the park.
Mm-hmm.
That feels stale to me. This is fascinating stuff. It's not just, it's not just about Disney. It's about the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. That's important to critique. That's important to comment on. That's important to share point of views. I think people have this idea that because it's Disney, everything should be, you shouldn't dig deeper than that. You should just be like, oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all for being optimistic. But I think all of this critique comes out of optimism because it's wanting to hold the company to a higher standard. In fact, I always find the counter arguments to the so-called critiques as being more pessimistic than the critiques themselves. You so often hear people say, just be glad there's anything at all,
Mm-hmm.
In regards to certain changes that happen. I don't find that very I think this is a great idea because it's inspired. It's this and that. And I hardly hear those arguments. I usually hear it usually comes off in a very just be glad there's anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
No. Listen, I'm glad they're using the Wonders of Life structure, but I'm going to hold what they're doing to it to a higher standard. In fact, I even would hold Wonders of Life to a higher standard than what it was. It's not about, well, I'm just glad it's being used. And I think that being a valid argument is a sign of the times. Things are so bad, you know, that it's like, oh my God, thank God there's something. You know, it's poisoned water, but I need water.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm going to drink it. I think it just shows, trying to bring us all together, I think it shows how hungry we are for something good. You know, for a great new, for the next Fantasia, for the next, you know, new Disney park with an inspired theme, with the next Pirates of the Caribbean attraction that changes the form of what a theme park attraction can do. That's what we're hungry for. So I understand why the need to go, oh God, thank God they're giving it attention. But we still have to lift ourselves up higher than that. We still have to go, oh, thank God they're giving it attention, but with what? You know? That's the basis of the conversation.
Yeah. I said this, which I forgot to shout out a channel at the very beginning. If you guys are still listening, I was on a podcast the other day. Mad About Disney, his podcast Mad Chatter. We went into a brief discussion about the Disney Fox deal. You guys should check that out. But I said to him that, well, I mean, first of all, I agree with you. I said to him that most, if not all, the people that I see talking about the Disney Fox merger, and it's not even really much of a merger, like you said. It's just the bigger shark eats the slightly smaller shark.
Well, it kind of is a merger because they're kind of one company now, you know?
I was going to say that most people are sort of only focusing on the part of the merger where, you know, your favorite Marvel characters, your X-Men can meet, you know, the Avengers. That's going to be cool, isn't it?
Right.
Or like a Simpsons ride in California Adventure. Wouldn't that be cool? You know?
No, but okay, no, go on.
Yeah, that's all. Basically, that's all you hear. At least I could be following the wrong people on Twitter, you guys. That's at least all I see when it comes to discussion.
And that is the only thing you hear, and you hear the jokes, which I think there's actually a sardonic kind of jabbing edge to the jokes about, like, does this mean that, you know, Homer Simpson is a Disney princess now? You know, people go like, oh, stop with those jokes. I mean, whatever. I think those jokes are fine because there is a sharp edge to those jokes. I think generally the public is like, what with this merger? I don't think they know how to process this merger. It is really a big deal. It's going to totally transform entertainment. I don't know if that's a positive change, which also means I don't know if it's a negative change. I don't know what this means. I'm skeptical of it because I want to strive for a future of diversity of creative voices. Not just one company owning every single creative property ever made to mankind. First of all, I don't think that's what Walt set out to do. That's scary to me. I don't know if it is to you, but like that's a scary idea. That's very dystopic to me.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. Nobody's talking about the bigger picture of this is a huge deal. This is a huge deal. You know, Yeah, the conversation on the media is, you know, well, the Disney homepage is filled with The Shape of Water and Alien.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it great how Disney owns all of these movies now? What will the parks be like? Will we have a Shape of Water attraction replacing the Haunted Mansion? I don't think that's actually, though, what people want to be talking about with this. I don't actually think that's what people want to be talking about with this. I think people are smarter than headlines.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of goes back to what you said. People don't know what to think of this, and I feel
I don't think they do.
I feel like we can come back to this
don't.
discussion in maybe, I don't know, 2, 3, maybe even 5 years. We'll come back to this discussion and we'll see how things have changed, if they've changed at all from now.
I think it's going to feel like they haven't. Just because, of that old metaphor of, putting the, what is it, like the toad or something, or something, a frog in a
boiling
pot of
pot,
water and the yeah. It's not going to feel different, but I think we will be able to go back. I mean, you can look back on stuff. Oh, wow. Just like how we look back on the parks and go, wow, it really has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the company. And Disney is really good at rebranding subtly.
Mm-hmm.
They're really good at rebranding themselves like out of thin air and nobody notices. It happened with Eisner and it happened with Iger, and nobody noticed that the company totally transformed.
Mm-hmm.
And people start to believe, oh, that's the way the company's always been, right? The parks have always been dumb. So who cares? Right? No, but isn't it? Animation's always been just farts and stupid.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, it wasn't. And then you watch Bambi and you're like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Wait, who made this? Disney? No, I thought they were just, let it go and, pop songs and, but seriously, yeah. Disney is a master at rebranding themselves as if it's always been that way. And we have to be, the challenge for our community is to watch with this merger. We have to watch and mark that transformation so we can hold it accountable to itself. Because what's the point of just going, isn't it great? I can watch The Simpsons on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, and personally, that's just not interesting to me. It's not interesting to me to just go, oh, wow, they bought Fox. That's a lot of movies. That's fantastic. Maybe it is fantastic, but I think there's something far more interesting. Given the history of the Walt Disney Company, there's something so much more interesting historically than just, wow, I can watch The Shape of Water anytime I want to on Disney Plus.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But going back to the point I wanted to bring this whole conversation to, all of this because I don't want this to run 1,000,000 hours. all of this conversation considered, I think the fundamental thing is, the fundamental question that we all have to ask is, what is Disney today? What is it? What is the Walt Disney Company? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's unrecognizable to me. What is it? Is there a clear brand? For lack of a better word, is there a clear product? Is there a clear voice? What is it? And I think if you pick that question to pieces, you'll find that it's gone. It's gone. It's in the past. It's a great thing that happened and we can look to for inspiration, but it's gone. It doesn't exist. So let's not get too emotional about it. The good news is what's happened in the internet age is, and recently, just in the past 2 to 3 years, this has happened. It's been happening slowly longer than that with the advent of the internet and bringing people together, in terms of YouTube and stuff. But we have a responsibility to take the principles and ideas that and experiences that that company has provided for us that we think are great and make them our own. We have to, I used to say about Disneyland in earlier podcasts, we have to seek our Disneylands elsewhere. We have to make our Disney elsewhere. We have to make it ourselves. If we have the ideas, if we have the passion for it, if we have the knowledge, and if we have read and studied and eaten up all of those amazing artists' voices, then we have a responsibility to make a new thing together as a community. We have it's a responsibility. If we think something like an Epcot Center is a noble idea and the Walt Disney Company isn't doing it, because I don't know what the Walt Disney Company is anymore, then we have to do it. Let's all get together and let's make our own World's Fair. Let's make our own Epcot Center. Let's make our own experience. Let's make new experiences that are of the world. You know, if that's what Disney did, let's be inspired and let's do it. I know this community is capable of doing that.
Yes.
So
yeah.
So that's where I want the conversation to end, because that to me is optimistic. There is a generation. It is timeless. The history of Disney is timeless. The young generation today, I think, has it in them to do that, to provide the 21st century with a new voice in continuing what Disney was cracking at in the 20th century. I think that's our responsibility as a community, as opposed to the so-called complaining. We need to make our critique about empowering us to be those artists. That is what I think the solution is.
Yeah, no, I feel like this community that we're a part of is sort of doing that. You see things like, I mean, I don't know if this is a good example or not, but you see, at least in the YouTube community, you see a bunch of passionate Disney YouTubers coming together and doing something, like Theme Park Tube, coming together, sharing their ideas, their voices, and there's a lot of great creators in that Theme Park Tube community who do a lot of good for just the community in general. I mean, Defunctland, single-handedly brought, well, I guess in my opinion, single-handedly brought Disney history almost basically into the mainstream with his amazing documentary videos.
He's sort of like where that story not ends, but where it ends today. But it goes back farther than that. I think it begins with like Hoot and Chief and Adam the Woo and Justin Scar. Kind of coming out of that crowd and separating themselves and doing something of their own. That got people interested in urban history, and because they had a passion for Disney, that got people interested in the details of that history. And then from that, I think you start to get, in the past couple of years, people like Defunctland and Theme Park Tube, and you, Matt, starting to then go, wait, we can tell the history of this company in an interesting and compelling way that no one else has told. And what makes all of these channels fantastic is that they all have a different point of view. One channel can do a history on Space Mountain and focus on track layout, and someone else can do a history on Space Mountain and the politics of getting it built. And then like we can do a history on Space Mountain and focus on on John Hench and the artistry of it and the history of making it as an artist. There's an infinite amount of ways to tell the history of this company. And I think by doing that and by popularizing it through this medium, this relatively new medium, it's going to not make people turn on Disney, but it's going to make people hold it to the same standard as we all do. I think that's powerful.
Yeah, really well said. I'd like to end this segment. I wrote down a question. I wrote down a question earlier in the show. I sort of figured we could end on this.
I see it. I'm looking at it right
question.
now.
The question being, why do you guys make Disney? And if Alex was here, he'd be able to answer that too. But why do you guys make Disney history videos when you feel so quote unquote negatively about the company today? And I feel like this would be a great way to send off the episode. I guess I'll start.
I feel like, yeah, you start because
since
you are
I'm
the father. You're my father. You're my dad.
I'm gonna make this quick because I have been holding in. I really need to pee, you guys, but I'm gonna try and be, as thorough as I can while also being, quick at the same time. I've drunken a Snapple, half a bottle of water, but now the question: why do you guys make Disney history videos when you feel so negatively about the company today? It goes back to what Jeremy, just said, what we were just talking about in between the whole community of this Disney, Disney history community coming together, helping preserve the history of the amazing company that Walt started back. It seems like, it was decades ago. I meant to say it seems like it was millions and millions of years ago, Walt formed the Walt Disney Company, and I feel like us trying our hardest to help preserve and maybe even continue on what Walt was doing, if it helps inspire, like you said earlier in the show, if it helps inspire someone, if someone's watching a video, if we happen to make a video on the movie Bambi, if someone happened to watch that video and hear us talking about the history of how that film had been made, how much time and effort was put into, just a single frame from that movie, how much time and effort and heart and creativity was put into that film as a whole. If it inspires someone to, dig deeper into the history of other Disney movies that they liked, other past movies, or if it inspired them to dig into the history of Disneyland, or if it inspired them to actually go and watch that film and then continue on, watch all of the films that Disney helped create, I feel like that is really what this is all about. And I think, like I said, I think Jeremy said this earlier in the show, but if it's, to me at least, it's about inspiring other people to, I don't know how to word it. It's just inspiring people to help them understand what made the Walt Disney Company back then so creative, so inspired. Yeah, I guess that's it for me. Jeremy, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, I think the reason for making the Disney history videos is about it. I think we do it because I hate to use it because we feel so negatively. No, because we feel there is a story that's not being told, and I'm coming in, I'm giving the perspective of this as the writer for these, so different perspective, but there's kind of a few schools of thought, there's the version of Disney history that Disney likes to tell, the company likes to tell, which is it's been passed down through memo that's been reviewed here, and it was created by basically people in marketing. There's that. There's the idea that Walt is the be all end all, the mythic figure, the one who created everything. And I think we create the videos because, at least what my approach to each of the history lands is that it's a story about artists making something personal, making something within them, you know. The story of Disney history is Walt being an equal with his artists. They were making these things together. It's a story about artists making things. And I think when you tell that story, first of all, you'll make people think about the company in a different way. Hopefully, you make them look at the company and go, oh, is that happening today? I don't know, but I'm curious. And they'll go to the parks. You find this, the influence of different channels is you have people go to the parks who watch a Justin Scard video or watch a Defunctland video, and they go and go, over there is that and that. I watched a YouTube video about it. Oh, you know who made that? This, Tony Baxter made that. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
There's someone who made that. I learned that through watching a video. And that's amazing, because then it's like you hear this used as a negative thing all the time. Disneyland is not a museum. I think it is a museum. I think Raleigh Crump articulated it really well in that LA Times article that came out in September that we talked about on the podcast back in September. It is a museum. A museum isn't a place to experience, it's stale, it's the past. No, museums are also a place to exhibit current art. Disneyland is an exhibition of artists' work, so it is a museum. In a way, artists worked on that stuff. They built that. They literally were in the park building that stuff. Those tiki god statues you see in outside in the Enchanted Tiki Room were carved by Raleigh Crump himself with a fork from the Disney commissary on site. He installed them himself. That's an artist's work on display.
Yeah.
And that's the story I think that's worth telling with the videos that we do. Anyway, it's why I feel inspired to keep helping you grow the channel and build the channel and tell these stories. Because if you tell this, because then you get people not just interested in Disney, but you get people interested in the arts. Whether it be writing, whether it be painting, whether it be design or architecture, you get people interested in the arts. And I think that is how you fix the company. You get more people interested in the arts. You get more people interested in creating experiences like a Disneyland.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I agree 100%. Alex, who is not here with us, did message me about the question we proposed. Why do you guys make Disney history videos so much when you feel so quote-unquote negatively about the company today? He sent me a message on Discord just now saying, I make Disney history videos so that I can remind old fans about the inspiration that Walt and the company has provided, and to teach new fans what kind of quality the company was founded on. I love Disney, and I believe they can still inspire us even in the future. And in parentheses, it says, please read this out loud. So, there you go, Alex. Yeah, I don't know how to end this properly. I guess I'd like to ask the question to everybody listening. How has Disney inspired you? Whether or not you're, I don't know, trying to build your own YouTube channel from 0 subscribers. If you have a passion for Disney, you decide to make a YouTube channel, whether it's that or whether it's, I don't know, whether you're an animator who fell in love with the golden age era of Disney films, who wanted to bring that kind of quality to the Disney company, whether you feel like you can do that, or whether, if there are any other examples, I don't know. I guess just any way you feel Disney has inspired you in your life. I'd love to hear that in the comments below. from all of you guys listening. Yeah, I guess that sort of wraps up this episode. We'll see if this goes on record. 2 hours, 49 minutes. I don't know what our previous longest episode was. I'll go back and look, I guess.
I think it's close. It's close.
You know, I think it's just under 3 hours.
I think 3 hours, like, on the dot is our record.
Probably.
And it's always when I'm on the show because I can't shut up, you know?
But yeah, like I said, you guys, in the comments below, I'd love to hear everything you have on your minds. And I think that's going to wrap up this episode of Matterhorn Mondays. Yeah, if you guys would like to, Jeremy's Twitter is in the description down below. So is Alex's YouTube channel. He's if you're not caught up with Alex, he's reviving his Disneyland History Today documentary series. He's also still making vlogs. He went to Disneyland Friday, I believe, to film a vlog. I don't know if he filmed there on Friday, actually, but he makes vlogs as well. So yeah, definitely check out Alex in the description below. Sad he couldn't come to make it to the very end of the discussion, but Jeremy is also in the description below. Yeah, do you have anything you'd like to say before I run off to use the restroom?
No. I wish Alex could have joined us for that last hour. I hope I didn't bore anybody, you know. But no, this was a great discussion, and just yeah, I agree with Matt. Really try to think about what Disney means to you, and I think you'll find it has very little to do with what the company is today.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be something very personal. Yeah, I think that's important to do today with a lot of things in life. But for this while, Disney.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like I said, I forgot to mention this at the beginning. I sent a message to myself, but go check out Mad About Disney, his podcast. I was a guest on it if you guys would like to hear me ramble on more about... we talked about the Endgame trailer, Avengers Endgame. We talked about the Fox deal. We talked about the Toy Story 4 trailer, so if you guys are interested in hearing both of our thoughts on that, link will be in the description below to his channel with his podcast, Mad Chatter, which is a great name for a podcast, by the way, the Mad Chatter podcast. I love that. And yeah, I guess that's going to wrap up this episode of Matterhorn Mondays. We hope you all enjoyed, and as always, have a great big beautiful tomorrow.